GM, just a quick one before we get going. So, as you know, the Blockmates podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Certainly shouldn't be considered as financial advice. We have absolutely no idea what we're talking about half the time. So, any investment decision you do make should be based on your own research and your own understanding of the risks involved. One more thing as well, there's around 50% of people who listen regularly who aren't subscribed yet. So, if you please could just do us a favor and hit the subscribe or the follow button or the like button, helps content grow, helps us grow, helps it reach more people like yourselves, and it means the world to us as well. So that's the last I'll ask of you. So yeah, let's get to the episode. But yeah, I was saying we've just got off Shitcoin Church, which Messi handed us the gauntlet over for, and we had Sammy from Redacted on, and so they've got liquid staking, like PX ETH it's called, so staked ETH. That's plugged into like their own validator set and their own relayer, which is kind of building like high value blocks. So it's extracting MEV from that way. And then they've also got the CDB stable on top of it. And because like everyone is so balls deep in the Solana ecosystem now, when Hxro dropped, everyone was like, what is the Hxro of Ethereum? Like that like phrasing had never been said before.
Never, always, right? That's it's total 180. That's incredible.
What is the GMX on Solana? What is the Aave of Solana? You know, and like someone said, what's the Hxro of Ethereum? Like it really cracked me up. But that's just like that culminated the sign of the times. Like
that is such a good bull signal. I love it. You know, it's interesting with Hxro, like there's been such a hot topic around the whole points thing, the whole points meta with in Solana, which ultimately, like, you know, I thought a ton about it, and like I think first of all, like points are interesting because there's like a very powerful gaming loop in them of like the users that are basically mining points are like points have this unpredictable nature to them, especially when you say like if you think about a lot of these projects, they're like, we've launched points. They don't talk about what the points represent. And there is a like serious dopamine kick that people have with like, it's like the hopeful farmer, right? Like the farmer that says like, I'm mining points or I'm farming points, and I don't quite know what these are going to result in for me, but the thought of what that could be makes them go at it even harder.
Yeah, let their imaginations run wild, and that's better than black and white. This is what you're going to get.
Than black and white, no, right? Like I think there's a trade-off. Like I think the trade-off is, well, first of all, Hxro, I think, has set a precedent now that made like just put points on kerosene because that drop was very lucrative, right? Mm-hmm. But I think there's a trade-off of like what, like, you know, I have people kind of know in the back of their head if it's going to be something comparable to Hxro, like users are going to flock, like farmers are going to flock. You're going to get the people that are coming out of the thousands and thousands of farmers that are coming out of the woodworks that are going to go to like platforms and open like a $1 or $2 account and try to ping pong each other back and forth to accumulate points and run all these strategies and stuff. But like, does that create sustainability? And I think that's something, like, I think what it does is it introduces it, like it indexes the protocol really well. Like it gets it noticed. But the question is like, how do you turn those users into sticky users after your drop? Like, it's kind of interesting that Margin is doing a great job of like just keeping like, hey, coming out and saying like, hey, we don't know what these points represent. Like, nobody said we're doing a token. Nobody said
you're getting some merch at the end of it.
Yeah, you might get right. It might be like going to like Chuck E. Cheese, right? You might get like you might have to turn in your tickets for like for a hoodie. And but it always brings into question like that versus maybe you're not going to get that rush of users and like the hopeful farmer, but does it make sense also to like think about more perpetual incentives? You know, and I think, I mean, that's like kind of a route like Hxro's take. Like we're about to, well, maybe I don't want to say it here, but like, we have some new incentive programs that are coming out that are not really points based. Like points are a way of keeping track of things, right? Like on the back end, but having perpetual incentives that I think are lucrative, like, you know, kind of something maybe DYDX proved out. And it, you know, it's an interesting experiment. There's no doubt that you need to have incentives, right? Like you unless you have something that like everybody absolutely needs, like, you know, you do need to incentives in from like a trading context or an exchange protocol context. Like traditional finance is full, like, you know, most of the when you have new markets like on the CME, for example.
What happens there? Is there like
same thing?
What's that form of incentive look like there?
So generally, what they'll do is they'll have like a new product come out, and their biz dev teams will go to proprietary trading firms like exchange members, and they'll put some type of like pilot program in. And the pilot program could be anything from like, you need to have a certain amount of uptime of providing liquidity into this market. Or if it's like, you know, a futures curve that has a lot of duration to it, like maybe there's different weightings for like, usually like when you go to like into the they call them like the back months, like long duration futures, there's generally, they're less liquid back there. They're just not quite as active. So they'll try to create some more incentive to have people post liquidity back there. So there's like some uptime requirement, and then there is like some volume incentives, which they walk a very careful line with to try to mitigate, you know, wash trading and things like that are very illegal on the CFTC regulated. Well, it's illegal everywhere, but like because it's market manipulation. It's just wash trading is not a good practice, and so, but they'll generally have some, like, they call them like jump ball incentives, where they're like, hey, we're putting this much money towards this incentive program, and it'll get split based on how you rank every month. And those programs sometimes will run for a year, 2 years. And then as that market starts to pick up, it starts to attract more organic flow, then those incentive programs will oftentimes change to just like an ongoing volume incentive program or some
just
type of
taper off as it becomes its own beast kind of thing.
Yeah.
What are they trying to get there? Are they trying to get everyone set up on the rails so if they want to trade in that market, they're good to go? Or like, are they just wanting like a shit ton of traffic going through there? Like, what is their reason for placing the incentive in that market?
Well, in most cases, it's in traditional finance, like there's generally like real economic purpose to these derivative products, right? Like, so like SOFR, which kind of has replaced the in terms of like short-term interest rate contracts, like CME Eurodollars was kind of like the main benchmark. And then now SOFR is what trades, which is like an overnight rate. That trades, I think, as often or more often now. And there was like, I remember a few years ago when SOFR first started to spin up, and there was like tons of incentive programs around them. But these things need very deep liquidity. You're talking about like open interest in global derivatives of, like between OTC, non-OTC of like $500 trillion. So there needs to be programs that people, that big trading firms will come in and allocate capital towards providing liquidity in those markets. And so,
it's like the same what's locked on the Blast multi-sig at the minute, isn't it? 500 trillion or some shit.
Is that what it is? Is that where it's at now?
nearly a billion though.
Holy shit, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
And imagine having stable coins locked on a multi-sig bridge whilst the market's been doing what it's been doing, and you're not getting them back till February.
Oh God. Believe me, man, I've been down that path. Like, my Hxro token's been locked for over 4 years. So I've been sold a one lot. And so I've been through a couple cycles with it. So I know the feeling. Feels good when you see the numbers, but the reality of it is like, it's not going
Can't
anywhere.
touch it.
So, yeah.
Still
got to grind a paycheck.
So on incentives, like I was speaking to Matt from Tapioca about this because, and this is a good segue into PepperDex actually. So what, like, their whole foundational research was built on looking at, like, obviously, I think Synthetics was one of the first liquidity mining programs, maybe like IDEX before that, and then Compound comes out and kind of changes the game, and like you just see this kind of, you give us what you need. We need depth of liquidity on our lending and borrowing protocol. We're going to give you basically free tokens, and that's, as we say now with points, it's kind of switched away from, well, instead of us just giving tokens for depositing when you can withdraw at any point, we're going to get people to use the protocol and drive some revenue through it, and hopefully it acts as a customer acquisition channel. And then we can kind of reverse engineer how many of our tokens we want to give away based on what we've seen. And then obviously with Tapioca and what like the options token model was, well, you give us what we need, and in return, instead of just giving you tokens away, because that's a cost of the protocol, because that's inevitably we know what happens there, they just get sold. But instead, it's kind of a bit of give and take. So there's going to be actually cash that comes back into the treasury when you exercise those options. So like the evolution of where it was and where it is like light years away. But give us a good segue into kind of Pepper and like how they're thinking about this current meta of airdrops, incentives, and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Pepper is a new DEX that's launching next month. They're launching their early beta of the platform, which is a Hxro Network powered DEX. So it'll be order book based. They very, very heavy focus on UI UX. They also are going to have vaults, like a VAMM vault that ends up, well, you'll be able to deposit to it on PepperDex. It's kind of cool because this is one of the network effects of Hxro Network, is that you can is that all of that liquidity becomes shared across the entirety of the network. So really cool stuff they're doing there. And that by the way it's now PepperDex and SpedX have merged together to kind of form this one mega team, which is really powerful. So I'm super excited and have been contributing quite a bit to it. So on that note, the way that they're doing their reward systems is largely option token based. And so the way that they originally had thought through it is that when you receive a reward, like an incentive for trading, just any volume that you're doing, you're going to receive some type of incentive. You would get a token. You would get basically an option that would give you the right, but not the obligation to own PEP. So you get this option called this token called OPEP, and then you could take OPEP and convert it to the treasury for regular PEP at a discount to the prevailing price. And so, and I think in EVM there's been, like Tapioca's kind of been like one of the thought leaders on this concept. I think there were some other projects like Bunny Pro or Lit Protocol. EVM that did it. And some did early versions of that, and I think there was a lot of things to be learned from those, because I think most protocols go in and have this intention of saying, well, look, like it makes sense because like PepperDex, for example, a considerable portion of protocol revenue is going back to stakers. So basically you're buying cheap PEP. You should take it and stake it into their VE style staking mechanism, get a multiplier on it. You basically have a huge ROI, provided that there's, that those incentives end up going in USDC. And so they've maintained that, but there's some nuances. I'm not sure if I can share them or not yet, but there's some cool. They're relaunching their docs actually in a couple days, so we'll see. You'll be able to read into what's happening there. But they've done some really interesting things. Like, and I guess I can keep it kind of basic. The idea is that somebody's getting this option token because they're being rewarded for participating on the platform, and when they convert it, they're paying in USDC or SOL to the Pepper treasury. And then a considerable portion of those dollars, like some portion of it, yes, is going to the treasury, but most of it is generally going back in the market or going to reward stakers. So you get this nice flywheel of, like, for every dollar that comes in, especially early on, I think an outweighted portion goes to poll, because you have to believe that, as we were saying, like, most people are gonna get that reward, convert it, and then sell it.
Mm-hmm.
But ideally, you end up with some level of logical people that say, well, look, I can own a very cheap PEP here, and some portion of that I'm going to stake, some I'm going to sell, and then some I'm going to stake. And so they're kind of running this nice match of saying, like, hey, you may want to sell, but, like, we're actually putting a considerable portion of those dollars back in the market. And so what's going to happen is some portion of it goes back to pool, so it adds to protocol liquidity, which they're going to try to build up to be very, very large. And then some portion is going to go to reward stakers, and then some portion of the dollars that come in from that conversion are going to go to buy back and burn PEP. Some portion of it is going to buy Hxro and max stake Hxro, because that gives them 400% boost on Hxro staking, which then becomes another form of protocol revenue, because now Pepper DEX is taking in protocol revenue from Hxro Network. And so when you kind of engineer it all together, maybe the amount of selling that would come from somebody who's being rewarded is heavily offset through over time of burn, and then also poll being a considerable amount of money going to poll. And I think there is, like, an equilibrium point that the way that they've designed this kind of updated version of it, that I think you're going to see it's going to be pretty exciting. And it does have the deflationary aspect from the burn, and some really cool stuff happening there. And so I'm a huge fan of it. Like, I'm a huge fan of this concept. And also, when you think about it, it really is also another way for a treasury to ultimately fund itself if it wanted to. Mm-hmm. If you think about, like, how, like, IDOs went at one point, I don't know how many people do these anymore, but you could go buy into a new protocol and maybe have a choice of saying, like, look, I can buy this at a 30% discount, and I trade that off for, like, a 6-month lockup, or I could buy it at a 40% discount for a 1-year lockup. Things like that. A lot of it kind of is the same concept in many ways. So it is a very interesting funding mechanism. I think the original concepts of, like, the option token that were implemented by some of the earlier protocols that did it, like in the EVM world, ended up, with this situation where it just was like the treasury was just eating up all the revenue, the protocol revenue that was coming from it. Not enough of it was going back to the market, so it just became like a way for the treasury to, the founding team to take a lot of cash from people into, like, a token that ultimately just had inflation on it. So I think Pepper DEX
is a less inflationary own fork.
It pretty much, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so this next generation, I think, I really like the way that they're thinking about it. And then they're going to be doing some early kind of points type of things, and some early airdrops, and so much of it in the beginning is just about really getting awareness and distribution. And also Pepper will go to a DAO relatively quickly, I think. And so getting a very wide spectrum of Pepper holders is very important. And so, they're not doing any like private rounds or anything. It's strictly going to be what's the market, and it's going to be open to everybody, which is going to be really cool.
Yeah, there's like two things on that. Aside from Hxro, I'm just excited to kind of see some actual DeFi innovation with tokens happen, because it's very few and far between. There's obviously you guys. It's about it.
I'll tell you what, honestly,
there's not much going on with that regard.
I'll give a shout to a project that does not do a ton of like public facing marketing about themselves. Is a project on Solana called Liquidity.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I've seen. There's been a few people in the chat speaking about these recently.
Yeah, the founder, I think he goes by Durden Wannabe. It's kind of his yeah, and he but they do some interesting things around like VE staking. All right. And some rewards. Like, I think that's a project to definitely look at. It's been around for a while, and so they just slowly like have become it's decent. It's got a really solid team behind it, and for the record, like, I don't own any Liquidity token. Like, I don't have any relationship other than having some discourse with them. I think when Flowmatic launched, which Flowmatic obviously is another cool project powered by Hxro Network. That's they have some cool. They're going to do some option token stuff as well on it, actually. Oh, nice. Which is going to be cool. So, but when they launched, there was a lot of discourse around what they're doing and like their O token concepts and stuff too. So, Durden was pretty vocal in that, and I had a lot of respect for how they've thought through things, and I think it's an interesting project. And Solana needs that, right? Like, I'm not quite sure that Solana definitely is not at the point where like DeFi on Ethereum has like gotten very deep and complex, and there's like definitely a concentrated community of DeFi, hardcore DeFi users, enjoyers that really like to dig in on these complex mechanics. And they're great experiments. And I don't think that Solana has evolved to that point yet. Like, we don't even have bribe markets or things like that in the Solana ecosystem. Yeah, it's definitely going to evolve there quickly. But the beauty of it is that you can do all these things, and it's way more flexible because it costs you virtually nothing to transact. So it's so immaterial when you make transactions on Solana that you can get really creative with this stuff. And these are like, it's early DeFi. These are experiments that we need to go through in order to find things that have fit. Like, if we're ever going to create a DeFi system globally that can be this alternate financial system, like this disintermediated global DeFi system, we got to go through these experiments to see, to find things that can create sustainability. And ultimately, I think that's what gets me excited. Like, doing points and stuff like that and farming for airdrops, like, yeah, it's cool. And like the money, like there's opportunity to make money, and who doesn't want to make money? Me as a founder, I have this trade-off that I battle all the time of like, do I want to spend time with that? I have all these other responsibilities, and like,
I bet
my whole mission in crypto in the last 5 years, and especially in the last 2.5 years, has been nothing but like try to push, drive Hxro towards becoming a sustainable, growing ecosystem with network effects, and that can accrue value back to its community. And it's not an easy thing to do, and it's it's hard to get people's attention, and especially when there's a bull market, and when it's a bear market, it's a ghost town. So it's an interesting balance to strike. I end up missing a lot.
You can get people's attention by doing the wrong things. Like you see the wrong people getting a lot of attention. Like that Mario Narfwall or whatever, he seems to shoulder his way into conflicts around the world, and then it's just that's the problem. It's like it's the same thing. Like if you think about like what we say with YouTube, we spoke about Caitlin about this as well. It's like, yes, we could drive like thousands more people towards the channel and the videos, but you have to look like a twat on the fucking thumbnail and have like stupid so it's the way that you get attention online is not, it attracts the people. Like, yeah, you're going to get numbers, but you're going to get quality of user at the end of the day. And like we've said it to a couple of people now. It's just like, if you want to come speak to us and you want like 1 million people to read your article, and they're all going to have like $1.50 in their account, and they're all like following BitBoy on YouTube and stuff like that, it's like you need to be optimizing for like quality of user, and it's very, very difficult in this landscape, I think.
When you do that, also, like I can relate it back to derivatives and exchange protocols and stuff. Like, I would honestly rather there's kind of like this balance you have to strike of it. I always use like this restaurant analogy. So somebody, the founder of like a big FX, huge FX, one of the more successful ones ever, company, made this analogy to me. He's like, we all know that trading is like markets are very Pareto principle when it comes to liquidity and volume. Like 2% of your users are going to do 98% of your activity. And so you need to be able to focus on those users and giving them what they need and be the best at that. And if you can do that, like you can build a liquidity mode. The counter to that is that you may largely go unnoticed because most of those people are secretive. They don't talk on Twitter. They are, they're quiet. And you also need this other side that, and this is where the restaurant analogy comes in, is imagine you're walking down the street and you're hungry and you see two restaurants side by side, and the one on the right is absolutely packed and there's beautiful people in it and it's got life and it's vibrant, everyone's talking about it, but it's like the Cheesecake Factory. Like it's not necessary. It's kind of run in the mill food and like maybe overpriced and not as exciting, but you're hungry, and so like you might end up going there because, hey, why, like everyone else is here, it couldn't be that bad. Next to it is this quiet restaurant that maybe has like 8 people in it, but it's like a Michelin 3-star restaurant. So, like, and they don't really, nobody really talks about it. You never heard of it before, but the chef is like a master chef, and so it's kind of you got to find which one you're going to be and kind of try to maybe strike a balance somewhere in between there, because you do need to have, it's such an attention-based economy, and you do need to get people's attention, but you also need to make sure that you're facilitating the people that are really going to drive the volume for you. Like, so for, I kind of segue that into Hxro a little bit. Like, we have been heavily focused in now, and now that like there is, like, we've had plenty of dApps that have built to the network so far, but a lot of them maybe didn't really push their marketing, or the product was a little janky. So now, like with PepperDex, with Flowmatic, with Convergence, a couple others, like between the end up to GuacDex now, we're doing some stuff with Bonk, like into the end of this year, and then into early Q1, you're going to see these more premier level, very polished dexes pop up that have marketing behind them and are going to make real pushes to grow and incentivize user growth, which again all feeds together, will all feed into Hxro Network. From the core network team, like what we've been really focusing on is kind of the liquidity formation aspect of it. And like I'm working on bringing in market makers and algorithmic trading desks and things like that who are, going to be highly incentivized and plugging in directly to the network to really, because that really is where your liquidity is going to form. Everything else that's coming in through the dApps is very, it's much more like retail, like kind of the taker flow. And you need to have both. But really you need to have the liquidity there. And again, this is one thing that in Solana that it like baffles me. And I am almost 100% sure that within the next 3 months, like Hxro Network will be the largest in terms of DEX volume on Solana. But if you think about that, like the Solana bar is not very high. Like it's kind of crazy. Solana was built, like the original thesis of Solana was NASDAQ at the speed of light. Like Solana was built for trading on chain. Yet in like peak Solana moments, right now, like the amount of volume that goes through on like in perps in aggregate is maybe close to $100 million a day.
Like I don't think there's a good venue for it yet.
I agree. And the liquidity, I mean, there's some, some good teams out there and stuff. And like,
yeah,
I think that like Zeta and Drift have like built some nice platforms. There's no doubt about it. Jupiter's thing is it's a Rube Goldberg machine, more or less. I don't find that those models to be fully sustainable, although they're very easy to use, and Jupe has built a great product. But I'm trying to think about how do you sustain liquidity for decades? It's trying to win the marathon, not the sprint. And so to do that, you really have to solve like a liquidity fragmentation issue, first of all. Like liquidity is so sparse. Like when you go to these venues, and again, they built, people have built some pretty polished DEXs, like the liquidity is like non-existent. You can't go to a DEX and have like, and if you want to buy 1,000 Solana perps, like you're going to move a market 2%, 3%, like that makes absolutely no sense. And the way that we've constructed dexterity and the way that our risk engine works, which is very much in line with how like the CME was built, for example, and what they base their, like, it is very pro liquidity formation. It allows us to do things that other DEXs cannot do, which is why we focus so heavily on building this kind of base layer infrastructure and then letting dApps plug into it, because we know full well that these dApps on their own, they're all competing for liquidity in an environment where, like, collectively, you need basically everybody involved into one set of markets to be able to really capture the reflexive nature of liquidity, like getting deeper and deeper liquidity in the market. And so what we're doing is like, we're not really going to like focus on like the next quick shitcoin perp and things like that. Like we have these early dApps, so like Guac DEX, Pepper DEX, Convergence, Flowmatic, things like that. They're focusing in on a market product group that's going to be very Solana, and then like assets that are very correlated to Solana only to start. And the idea there is that we want to create the deepest, like there's no reason that Solana on-chain derivatives, like the deepest Solana liquidity should be on-chain, and it should be on Solana. And so let's start with the Sol perp and make the Sol perp the deepest, best liquidity. So when somebody wants to come in and buy, 2,000, 3,000 Solana, they can trade it and actually have the market to move in and out of those things. And that's how that liquidity cycle really starts. And then when you have assets that are tightly correlated to that, so we're launching some other perps that are very well correlated to Solana, and then you have the ability to trade those as combinations, which is one thing that Dexterity, we talked about this, like the whole spread concept that Dexterity has that other platforms, that other protocols don't have, and the ability to do portfolio margining. So like if I'm long Sol perp and I'm short a Jito Sol perp, the correlation, those are two highly correlated assets. Like if you have to inventory that, like carry it as a position, like a hedged position, it is like the most capital efficient way is to do it through Spandex, through our risk engine, which like you could be getting upwards of like 70, 80 to 1, like comfortably, in terms of like your margin, your collateral requirements. So all those things that we've been really executing on for a couple of years, and we've launched some other side projects, the ZDFs and things like that are good experiments, and those still will continue to push. But our core has always been about trying to build for this liquidity formation, much in the way that traditional markets have, but with all the benefits of being on chain in terms of disintermediation and a more inclusive landscape and transparency and mitigation of systemic risks, things like that. And so that finally, after a couple of years of building, like we're at a point where you're going to start to see that come to life. And now we're going to have the dApps, because we didn't, other than some reference implementations, haven't built our own front ends, because that's not what we do. Now you have teams that have come and are going to be able to really push with like good solid marketing behind them, and good solid teams and good product to start pushing and then unifying all that liquidity and letting it roll. So exciting time.
Yeah, I think everyone's excited for it. And I like, just even in our chats now, it's like, where can I trade perps on Solana? And I just wish like it was just like could just funnel them to Perptex immediately. And then they're looking around, and then no names mentioned, they like complain about not being able to get in with like anything, not even like meaningful size, just like wanting to put a couple of grand on something like that, and it's just not there.
Crazy.
No,
it's crazy. It's not for lack of like those platforms, those like the UI UX on those platforms isn't bad at all. It's just I don't think that they're thinking about it at scale at this point. And so our first goal is like to really own Solana liquidity, like on Sol, and then the things that are tightly knit with Sol, build duration into it's like actually have a real Sol curve, which becomes interesting for validators and for funding and for how LSTs work. And there's so many interesting things about that. And all of that, all of that liquidity rolls back up to the perp at the end of the day. And we ultimately want to, I want to see a market where you could end up a penny wide and be able to put 5,000 Sol on, and not get, and feel okay doing it in a market. And is that going to come, January 1st? Probably not. But it's what we really want to build for. And look, again, Solana was made for trading on chain. It is like you can see it clearly in if you go on Bird Eye and just watch like Cheeto Sol or M Sol or Blaze Sol, things like the LSTs trade, and watch how the arbitrage is run. Like it's a beautiful thing. It's like that's what facilitates really good liquidity. It's like it's just a base element to it. And we've built over the last couple of years the best tooling to facilitate that for derivatives. So
can you fill everyone in on Convergence, because I think this is quite a topical aspect of the industry that's becoming more and more at the forefront, I think, of what these guys are doing.
In terms of like the RFQ stuff, or
yeah.
No, I think that it's funny, they were the first. I think they were the first protocol to actually start building on Hxro when we first started. But our core engineers with their team had done a lot of customization work. Like we built a tool called Print Trade that basically, Print Trade I love. Print Trade reminds me of something on CME called Clearport. Like where if you're a member and you're registered to Clearport, like you and I could technically, if we were both members of the exchange and had access to Clearport, you and I could agree to a trade vocally. Like we could be in a bar and be like, I can be like, I want to buy S&P futures. You'd be like, I want to sell S&P futures. And we could like, let's trade 500 contracts. And like, we could actually go into Clearport and punch that trade in, and it will clear and settle and be run on risk through CME, which is a really cool concept. So we built this thing called Print Trade, which basically is the same thing. You have a trader account that works with Hxro Network. I have a trader account that works with Hxro Network. You and I could agree to a trade as long as Hxro Network is facilitating those markets. You and I could agree to a trade. We could enter the information in, and it will clear and settle, and risk will be run. You have a collateral requirement, takes it from your trader account the same way. And so what does that lead into? It leads into like things like RFQs, which is really where Convergence is focusing on. It also leads into where I think this will evolve is kind of like the intense meta, which I know has been a popular thing starting to run up with like IntentX and Simio and guys like that. But you can start to do some interesting things off of Print Trade that is kind of like that reverse RFQ model, like what IntentX is. And so I think you'll probably see that come from some Hxro dApps, whether it's through Convergence or PepperDex or things like that are some other interesting dimensions for liquidity. But yeah, I like what Convergence is doing, and they're doing some cross-chain stuff too, I think, right? Am I thinking about that right? Yeah, they're just like in constant build mode.
I think there's a few. I interviewed Anna from Cow Protocol last night. So Cow Swap, if you ever used it, and they're a intense Cow RFQ based DEX, and
they were kind of like the original one, right?
Yeah. They spun out of Gnosis, and then that was the product that they released. But she was definitely hinting at they were going cross chain. So just being able to like signal that you want to, I don't know, you're starting on Ethereum, you want to end up on Arbitrum or Avalanche or whatever the fuck. It's like it's definitely going that way. It's got to, like, the state of bridges at the minute is just horrendous. So I think infrastructure like that is just so important.
Way too important. I mean, like, and just like the solvers or the relayers kind of facilitated an important role there. It's interesting to me that even like on base, I think like the fastest a trade could be executed and settled is maybe like in 4 seconds or something like that, like in an absolute perfect world. I mean, on Solana, it's 400 milliseconds. It's like, what is that? Is that 10,000 times faster? 1,000 times faster. So I think that Solana is going to end up being the base chain for these things to settle to, because like, what's the point of settling it to Ethereum if it's going to take, settlement is like, when true settlement on Ethereum is like 8 days or something, isn't it? Like something crazy.
Yeah. From the L2, so they have time to question fraud proofs and fault proofs and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Solana's got a lot going for it right now, man. Like, it's especially like we haven't even hit the derivatives trading momentum yet, and
that brings so many people. It's like, imagine, like, what have you got now? You've got your DYDX, which I think siloed itself away, and I think that they're probably going to underestimate that friction to get people over there. Vertex I like on Arbitrum. They've got some stuff that gets settled off chain. Hyperliquid, not too dissimilar. GMX, I love the guys over GMX, but you're probably going to get screwed on fees at some point.
I mean, it's just the problem, right? Like, you just can't sustain. Traders are. It's more of a. It's to me, it's more akin to Rollbit. Like, it's like you can't. Like, Rollbit becomes gambling when you trade futures there, because they clip 10% of your upside, right? Like, and also it's just a CFD market. It's a B book. Like, you're trading against the house, and they're like, oh, you can only keep 90 cents of every dollar that you win. So it truly is like gambling. It's I think that haircut is what like crosses it over to gambling from actual like trade speculation. And so I'm like, you just, at that point, if you're going to pay fees like that, or you're going to do things like GMX for that matter, like you should treat it like entertainment. Because like on Hxro Network, if you were like written direct to Hxro Network, or I'm sure this will end up happening with some of the DEXs, like let's take Pepper DEX for example. So let's start at the base with Hxro Network. Hxro Network is if you make a market, like if you put a limit order in, it's free. It costs you zero. That's if you're written direct, or if you went through one of the reference implementations to trade, which are all open source. It's zero. To take liquidity, it starts at 5 basis points. But if you own Hxro and you have staked Hxro, you can delegate that stake, just the rights of the stake. You don't have to like move the actual tokens. Just the rights of the stake connect to the wallet that you're running your trader account through. You can go all the way, depending on how much you have staked, you can go all the way down to 1 bit to take liquidity, like 1 bit. As close as you can get to being free. And like over time, the amount of money that you keep in your wallet and in your risk account by not having to pay those fees or those like outrageous funding rates, things like that, it's your profit, it's your P&L. It's the difference between what allows you to make a living at it and what doesn't. And so that like at the base layer is how it's going to work. And then like Pepper DEX will have something similar, but Pepper, because it has a token, it has staking, will have a similar incentive fee where like a program where the fee will drop based on what your stake is. So I think over time, it's like you have the speed of Solana, you're on chain, it's your keys, and then you're going to be trading at a rate that is just like so much better for you from an economic standpoint. Like, I don't understand why you would go to something that is like going to charge you to open a trade and close a trade and jack funding up on you. And like, you just cannot win over time. You can't win. So we're trying to set it up so it is like as fair. This is like as close to a public good as it'll ever get for trading infrastructure, which is what it should be.
I do think it's just one of those things. If it is available to people, they will seek it out and they will use it. It's just like you've got what we've got at the minute. And I think the DEX market share in spot and derivatives is only going to eat into centralized exchange market share for spot and derivatives as well. God knows what's going to happen with options. I don't know what the kind of standoffish nature is with crypto and options, because if they realize the leverage you can get on options, like have you seen Good Entry Labs?
No.
I'll send you the documentation. But basically what they've done is they've kind of Trojan horsed an option into something that looks like a perpetual, so like non-liquidatable perps, Good Entry and all that good stuff. But I think it really takes something like that to get people, like perps is like a relatively new derivative, and everyone just jumped all over it. And talk about expiring futures and options. It's like, don't necessarily want to touch them, but maybe it's the same situation of what we're speaking about now. Is there really anywhere apart from Deribit where you could actually trade liquid options in the industry? If there was,
no.
Would you start seeing people moving aside, people start winning, people start talking about it? That's like a new avenue to approach. So it's like,
I think they want to, but
chicken and egg.
Like I would say to people, like, learn to trade futures first. Like, learn to trade something linear first. Options are non-linear. Like you have a time element to them. You have a volatility element to them. You have an intrinsic value element to them. Like they're not easy to understand. And I can sure as hell guarantee you, like, any price you're paying to own an option or to sell an option is not at least right now, is not a fair price. Like in traditional worlds, absolutely, because the market's gotten very tight. But also go look at how much money, option trading firms make, like the liquidity providers, like, should tell you, like, that money comes from somewhere beyond just exchange incentives. Like, so I would encourage people to learn. Like, when we started building Dexterity, we originally thought about building for options, and then we like, my thought on it was like, well, hold on a minute. Like, we don't even have real term structure based futures liquidity on chain. Like, let's get that first, and let's make that tradable and liquid, and then let's add options on top of it. And that way, like I would encourage people to learn how to like spread trade futures. Like, come into a Hxro Network powered DApp, like learn how to trade, two highly correlated perps to each other, like long one, short the other. Like we make that, our infrastructure makes that very easy and accessible. And it's like super, it's a whole, because you're trading the relationship of A to B. You're not trading up and down anymore, which is an interesting concept for people. Like, everything in crypto has been built to trade up and down. And that's where all the volume has, all the kind of degeneracy has come from. But like, there is such a better world of these other dimensions of trades that has yet to really be discovered. I want to really push to educate traders on that, like spread trading and pairs trading, things like that. And then get to options, because then you have to introduce the nonlinear things about options. Options seem fun, but they're like, you don't want to have to keep refilling your account every few weeks. So, but there, so there's a long road of education that, it's like, I don't, like, Kate's big on, obviously, like, wanting to educate people. It's kind of like her stake on things, and hopefully from our perch, from our pulpit, we can start really sinking our teeth at, as some of the more commercialized dApps that are, that Hxro Network is powering, like GuacDex and BonkSwap and PepperDex, Flowmatic, start really pushing publicly and usage picks up there. Like, we're going to do a lot of support to drive education through that. And then we'll get to options. Like, I think there's another horizon there, but I think the industry really needs to hone in on like getting crazy amounts of liquidity into these base products first.
Are you good for time, by the way? I know I've kept you over there.
I probably got to jump, but also my battery's going to die. But no, this has been great.
Open invite whenever.
Thanks, Grant. You guys are the best, and I am always grateful for the support you guys have given Hxro thus far, and I feel like we've all like kind of come up together. Like, we started, we all started getting close with each other when Blockmates was just being formed, and it's amazing to see you guys grow the way you have, and now we're in a high probability of an extended bull market here, and man, you guys are gonna really fucking slay it. So I'm excited, and I'm really grateful to have you guys a part of the Hxro community, and it's been fun this far, and now we're gonna start to see a lot of that harvest, which will be exciting.
100%. This time's our time around for both sides of the fence. So look forward to it. And as I say, anything you need, and send us the Pepper docs when you get a minute, and we'll spin something up. Ollie, one of our writers, is balls deep. He cannot wait. So anything that you throw him on Pepper, he'll be all over it.
They might be the new docs might be coming out today. I gotta check with their team, but there'll be some cool stuff there. So sweet.
All right, everyone, take it easy. Speak to you next time.
All right, thanks. Bye.